Hi, thanks for joining us. My name is Max Ball. I am a principal industry analyst at Forrester, and I focus on customer service, contact centers, and customer experience. And today I'm joined by Evan Macmillan, and he is from Gridspace. And Evan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Max. It's great to be here.
The title of this session is Raising Your Game, How Modern Contact Centers are Differentiating with Conversational AI. And we're going to get all over the contact center in general and pretty deep into AI and conversational AI, what that means. And, this is such a critical moment in the world. It's just an exciting time. Um, as painful as the pandemic has been and continues to be, it forced a lot of change in the contact center. It's a whole new world out there. There's so much more work from home. And in order to do that, a lot of new technology has been brought to bear. There's a lot of moving to the cloud. And I think what's exciting is what I'm starting to see from a Forrester perspective is early cloud adoption was mostly like for like. I was routing calls, I was doing voice response. It wasn't all that different. But now more and more software that's available in the cloud is starting to do stuff that you just plain old couldn't do on premises. And a lot of that is really around AI and some of the conversational capabilities that are there. So it's just a really exciting moment. And there's a lot of really new things that are out there and that are going to be possible. So that's a lot of what we want to talk about today.
And it's such an exciting time because some of the biggest headlines this year have been about voice. And Max has been working on voice for a really long time. So it's a joy that you're here today to share your perspective on it and dig into kind of what is really working and what people are still trying to figure out when it comes to automation in the contact center.
Yeah. Tell us a little about your background. How did you get here?
Uh, I've been fascinated by speech technologies my entire life, and I was fortunate to go to school in an area where folks could go really deep on a technology they liked, and with the help of folks that sort of understood the next steps, could kind of put together a plan to bring those efforts to market. So I was really fortunate to get the opportunity to take some of the things that we were working on with regard to speech processing and learn about contact centers, and ultimately make a product that powers billions of audio minutes for some of the biggest brands in the US. So it's a super interesting category once you get into it.
Yeah, it is. We laugh at work. No one ever goes to college and says, "Oh, I want to get into the contact center space." But once you get into it, it's kind of addictive. I've had over 30 years, about a decade or more, specifically on voice response, which is kind of the primitive grandfather of the stuff your company's doing now. So, just going to talk a little bit about trends overall in customer engagement and the contact center, customer service, as we call it here at Forrester. This first slide, we have the concept of a CX index, and this is the CX for customer experience. And this is broader than the contact center. This is everything from I went to your website, I bought something, and my shopping cart blew up on me, so I had to order it again, to the product itself, what that interaction is like, how is the ordering process, how is getting the stuff that I need. If I have a question, can I get that? And then there's this emotional piece, this emotional connection. So those things add up to what we call the 3 E's. And there's effective. How good was the company at meeting what I needed? Did this product solve the problem it was supposed to solve? Was it, and then there's ease. Was it easy to use? Did it take me 3 days to get something simple set up? And ease, and this is where it starts to get into customer service quite a bit. Ease is more than how easy is the product to use. It's also, I had a support question. How easy was it to get that answered? How easy was it to order it? all of that. So what did it take to actually make this happen? And then emotion, there's some staggeringly wonderful examples. Apple obviously always comes to mind with emotion. There's Zappos. There's companies who really, people connect with the brand and they really feel bought into it. So, all of that is another way of talking about customer loyalty, keeping the customers, getting them to buy more, saying good things about your brand, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what we're talking about primarily today is customer service. And all these things, the emotion, the ease, and the effectiveness, they all have the customer service experience, the contact center experience has a big role to play in that. When you do that stuff right, the power of having a good customer experience is really strong and really positive. If customers are feeling appreciated and happy and valued, they're going to connect with a brand. And it's not so great on the other side. Now, people are going to keep business with the brand. It's only 18%. The stakes are really high. The expectations are higher than ever. And I know we'll kind of talk about that as we get into more of our discussion piece of this. So Forrester's done a lot of research, not surprisingly. And one of the things we've found is there's a whole lot of meh out there. I'm kind of curious what you've seen out there in terms of how do customer expectations get set?
You have to translate really good customer service to what it is that your company is doing. And I think it's really interesting, just taking Amazon as an example for a second. I mean, the experience is really a multifaceted thing. A lot of the goodness you talked about, brand goodness, comes from the fact that you can get a basketball hoop in, to your house in 2 hours for free. That's really, really good. And then a lot of goodness comes from the fact that you can return that basketball hoop for free. And then, there's the customer interfaces around that hoop purchase and return experiment that fit really, really well with Amazon. And, we deal with a lot of regulated banks, insurance companies, healthcare companies. And the challenge for those companies is you can't copy Amazon. You can't copy Amazon for a bank account opening or a kidney transplant. And what they're finding is that a lot of the tools, have to be adapted, and they have to be adapted in some pretty, pretty fundamental ways to be able to have a natural emotional conversation about a health condition or something really important like your money.
And I think a lot of it is because a lot of it has to be voice. It's something where being able to have it be a conversation is a really powerful way to go with all of that.
And also finding those clusters of shared problems that maybe aren't making their way to Twitter, but are also acute, that are happening up. Also not so easy if you have to go back and listen to every single call. Most folks want to catch these kinds of issues before everybody's talking about it on social media. And I think that's where, that's part of the opportunity of these systems that are capable of, actually being that set of extra ears across, all the calls that are coming into the contact center.
Do you have a good customer story you can tell about somebody who's got a good set of ears and how that works and what that looks like?
I do, but I wanted to, because I was reading about your background, Max, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about sort of your background and sort of what you've seen, going back, I guess, almost 20 years now to sort of the early days of IVR. What did IVR look like before I got out of high school?
Everything was about, we're not going to go to an agent. It cost me 25 cents to do this call in the IVR. It cost me $2.50 or $5 or whatever to have an agent. The mindset was all wrong. It was all about automation. It was all about the completion rates. That's all important. And you want to automate and you want to deliver as much of that as you can. But you need to have de-escalation to a human. You need to have the back door to let people out. I even remember back kind of late 90s, early 2000s, there was an organization called Get Human. And what they would do is they would call Citibank and whatever, all a bunch of big companies, and they would figure out the fastest way to get to an agent.
Yep.
So you'd look at there and it would be, press 1, press 3, wait 4 seconds, press 2, and yell agent. And that's the fastest path to get to an agent. So actually somebody went out there and reverse engineered the various IVRs and then put it up on the web. That's how bad it was.
Yep.
But Evan, I'd be curious for you, what do you have around kind of the best practices for today's technology and some of the things that you're seeing with your customers?
I think now, a really fundamental thing has changed. It's no longer do these systems have to sit on islands. So the way that we sort of deploy our IVA capability is the same way we deploy our observability software. So a human to human call is observed and processed the same way as a human to virtual agent call. And the really good thing that comes about from that type of approach is when folks get stuck, those calls, those rough interactions are observed and caught and improved upon in the same way that the stuck human to human calls are observed and caught and improved upon. So that sort of connection between the automated experience and the human experience, which is so critical, and that's where the frustration really lies, is in the transitions between these two, has gotten a lot better. There's a lot that you can do when you can have a conversational interaction with a virtual agent. You can slow down. You can ask the question another way. And that's not sort of chipping away at these other sort of classic contact center metrics. Our virtual agents talk to seniors, and we find that seniors love it when the questions are asked a little slower and the follow-ups are a little bit more thoughtful, because why not? There's not another call to get to. It's an experience that is designed for that person, and it can play out on the timeline that is needed. Another big thing is noise environments. So a lot of the challenge of any sort of voice interaction is making sure people can hear each other. And if there's a bunch of information you have to collect and the noise environment's not so good, it wastes a lot of time. And if you can pick up on that noise environment or even sort of cut through it with machine learning, that makes the contact center a lot more efficient.
Interesting. That's really powerful. How does all of this impact the agent?
So I think the perception of a contact center agent is somebody that works in a big room with a headset on, and they're just taking calls day in and day out. And there are a lot of folks that are in that kind of role. The reality is, even those folks are doing things outside the call. And that's especially true when you get into the world of healthcare and financial services, where these are folks that are taking care of patients in physical clinics or meeting with folks in person at branch locations because of things that are going on in their financial worlds. So these are folks that are juggling a lot of different responsibilities, and because of these routine contact center inquiries, aren't always working, like we say, at the top of their pay grade. And from the customer's perspective, it's frustrating because you're dealing with people that are doing routine work, and people are smart. They can feel that sort of frustration, through a phone line. But the other sort of part of it that's really interesting, I think, is that when you get into those really, really, good automated experience like we have on the web and translate them to voice, I think the perception of IVR starts to change. I can't tell you how many times I've been through an IVR experience and I mash 0, or I ask for an agent because the experience is bad and I'm not getting what I want.
We don't need people to do stuff robots can do, but there always will be a need for agents. it's just going to be, a job that's carries a lot more respect, a job that's going to have a career path, because you're the guy that went in and spent your days talking to the customers and helping them through the real stuff that's there. And kind of, you talked about some of the back end processing so that the agent has all the right information they need to be able to really help. They can actually solve the problem and they know who this is. It's going to be a very different job.
Yeah, I mean, think about the situations in your own life when you have been sort of thrust into the situation without any context, without any introduction, without any sort of roadmap on how to make the situation better. I mean, I've been in those situations and they're frustrating and they don't always go so well. And that's an agent's life every single day. They pick up a
Right,
phone, they
right.
have no context, they haven't been introduced in a way that establishes them as an authority to actually take care of the problem. And they have no idea what this person was going through beforehand. So not only do they have no context on the problem, they have no idea of the emotional state going into the call. And that's pretty much an agent's job day in, day out. As we move to these virtual agents that have the capacity to have those sort of front end conversations as well as back end conversations with folks, but focusing for a second on front end conversations like enrollment questions and eligibility questions and pre-appointment, questionnaires. When the handoff comes to the human agent, it's a much more powerful handoff. The questions that you would have to be asking, again for the first time, you already know the answers to, and the agent and the patient start on the same sort of page with some rapport, and just things end up sort of becoming more like a more of a friendly interaction just based on that sort of context that was built up. And I think that will change the nature of the job. I mean, contact center agents and folks on the front lines. I mean, you look at sort of what's happening in nursing too in the US, and these like frontline jobs where there's a lot of these really tough administrative tasks, churn is through the roof. And a part of the reason why churn is through the roof is these folks are not being set up for success. They're being put into situations where they're talking to a patient, they're talking to a customer, and they're not really being put in a position to succeed. And if we can change that with some new interfaces, that's going to be a big deal for some of the churn statistics in these careers.
I do think more and more, as an agent becomes a more specialized role, companies are going to be willing to have that person work from home or wherever. So I can be hiring people across the country, and I can hire people based on their expertise, not based on the fact that they live within an hour's drive of my office. And that opens up a whole world of people that you can look at and work with and pick up a whole nother level of expertise. So I think all these things are kind of coming together to really change what an agent looks like.
Yeah, totally. So Max, before our time's up today, would you like to hear one of our virtual agents at Gridspace? Would you like to
I was just going to ask you if we could do that. I would love that. That would be great.
Cool. Well, we have Cooper Johnson here today. Cooper is one of our voice user interface designers at Gridspace. And Cooper, what Grace virtual agent are we going to be speaking with today?
Today, we're going to be talking to what's called an outbound use case for Grace. So this would be a Grace who could be deployed to reach people. And possibly the coolest thing about this use case is that Grace does a lot of the heavy lifting or the nitty gritty, depending on how you look at it, of obtaining details prior to transferring to an agent. So Grace, posts a lot of data, pre-populates a lot of fields that, an agent would need, but, spares the agent having to go through all those details. And also interestingly, basically every question in this outbound use case is a juncture. Every question could be qualifying or disqualifying. And there'd be a smart transfer out of this use case, this outbound Grace, to the right agent depending on various criteria that are applied to every question. So this one is about healthcare, enrolling for a health plan, and I'll give it a call right now.
Hello, my name is Grace. We received your information requesting healthcare coverage. I have agents standing by in your state. If I may verify your information, I can transfer you to an agent who can help you purchase a healthcare plan. May I ask you a few quick questions to help you get enrolled with the healthcare plan?
Yeah, now's a good time.
Great. Here's my first question. Are you under the age of 65?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do any of these apply? Are you on Medicare or Medicaid, or are you pregnant or on disability or being treated for cancer?
None of those, fortunately.
Thanks. If you find a plan that meets your needs, can you budget at least $150 per month?
Yeah, that can work.
Okay. What is your state of residence?
I live in Pasadena, California.
Thank you. Can I get your full name?
Cooper Johnson.
Great. And can I get your date of birth?
November 16th, 1986.
Thanks. And what is your zip code?
90013.
Okay, thanks. Now I'm ready to get a licensed agent on the line to compare plans for you. Please hold for a brief moment while I connect you.
And that's the point at which we transfer out of the call. But just to recap, after asking me to opt into the call, which is so important, both, for knowing if this, basically for knowing if a call is successful, but also being polite to people. Grace asked me the question if I was under or over 65. And that was really like the main juncture point of the call. That would have put me into the Medicare eligibility. If I were over 65, I would have transferred to one agent. But since I'm under 65, it kind of put me into the general, Affordable Care Act queue. And every question after that, asking like what state I lived in was relevant to, like which state markets were applicable and, which states can do this kind of business over the phone. So everything was a meaningful question there, and it saved an agent having to do both the data intake and having to make these like logic-based decisions about what queue a customer should be put into just so they could be transferred to a more specialized agent.
And it sounded pretty good too.
Yeah, I was struck. There was even a point where she kind of went, very, the level of conversationalness was impressive. And as a guy who's guilty for a whole lot of really bad customer experiences, I'm just so glad that things are moving in a much better direction.